Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking Baine Bloodhoof. We are talking Jaina Proudmoore. We are talking Derek Proudmoore and Calia. We are talking the future of the Forsaken race and the existing two factions. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special surprise Taliesin Talks, where we are going to look at an unexpected reunion. The incredibly fittingly named surprise new war campaign cinematic that went live with 8.1.5. And well, actually, look, I say it was a surprise cinematic, but it wasn't a surprise to all of us, you know, because look, and I don't want to dwell on this, okay, because it's not important, but I did kind of predict on stream before the patch went live that there would be a surprise cinematic based entirely on one Terran Gregory tweet from the night before. And like I say, I'm not going to bang on about that because it's no big deal that I was totally right. So honestly, I don't even know why you mentioned it because no one cares, you know, but what I mean was I was completely right. That's all, but whatever. So this new cinematic comes at the end of the new war campaign quests for both Horde and Alliance. And you might well know that here on this channel, when something like this drops, we like to make a video to really pick apart those new cinematics, analyze them and identify all the references and the hidden details and just generally geek out with some deep dive fun times. And that is exactly what we are going to do today. So first things first, this is not a reaction video, okay? I have now watched this cinematic more times than is probably healthy for a human being to watch the same 2.5 minutes of video. So if you haven't seen an unexpected reunion yet, then this video now, this is a terrible way to watch it because we're going to be stopping and starting and going back over stuff, and we're also going to be spoiling the shit out of the war campaigns for both Horde and Alliance. So if you don't want to know what happens yet, then seriously, don't be a dick, go and watch something else. For the rest of you though, join us for a cinematic deep dive analysis of an unexpected reunion, as we ask, what has Baine done and should Jaina trust Derek Proudmoore? Okay, go 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 go. So before we get into the cinematic itself, it's time for a very quick history lesson, because this is part of the war campaign, which means that depending on the faction you play, there may be stuff that you haven't seen and will never see, and we should probably fill in some of those gaps for you. The Horde campaign at the very start of Battle for Azeroth saw players retrieving the body of Derek Proudmoore from the depths of the ocean where it had laid since he was killed by dragons during the events of Warcraft 2. So technically, this storyline is 24 years in the making. Sylvanas has been keeping his body handy on the Banshee's Whale since then, and in the aftermath of the Alliance attack on Dazara, which leaves the Horde in disarray and on the brink of defeat in the war, the Dark Lady decides that now is the time to unleash her secret mouldy weapon and raise Derek Proudmoore with the aim of returning him to his family as a sleeper agent to, and I quote, murder them in their sleep, which is going to involve mind controlling him, the kind of dismantling of Forsaken free will that is supposed to be a massive no-no for the undead, but which we've seen Sylvanas indulging in quite a lot this expansion already, with the raising of Night Elf Dark Rangers in Teldrassil, and this indoctrination has already started in Dazara before our next mission starts. Because Baine Bloodhoof is not happy because he's such a po-faced killjoy, he doesn't even think it's appropriate to use the mind control corpse of a family member to launch a chemical weapon suicide attack on people because, I don't know, honor or something, I guess. And he makes a plan with the player to return Derek to the Proudmoores before Sylvanas can have her wicked way with him. We enlist Valeera to organise a meeting between the two factions, which totally works because Shaw trusts her for all the good work she's done for Varian and Anduin, while Horde players go all Black Ops with Baine to rescue Derek from the Swift Vengeance, an attack which involves not killing the Forsaken crew we encounter. Okay, fine, not killing most of the crew we encounter, and hot-footing it to our rendezvous with Jaina in Theramore, which is where our cinematic begins. And we open with this shot, which is already packed full of meaning and suggestion. There's the obvious mood setting stuff, like this being the dead of night, this a covert meeting under the cover of darkness, but the darkness here isn't just literal. The Alliance are on the brink of victory in this war, and Jaina is taking a massive, massive chance, potentially putting all of that at risk by even turning up for this meeting. She has willingly stepped into this darkness, with its fog of uncertainty obscuring the things around her. Front and center is a ship that we know extremely well as both Horde and Alliance players because it's Jaina's psychological ghost galleon, her father's ship that she raised from the depths in the Jaina Warbringers, which she used to attack Lordran in her triumphant return, was the setting for her Nightmare cinematic, how she arrived in Borealis after years away from home, and the ship that launched the attack on Dazara Law. And when I call it her psychological ghost galleon, I'm not even joking. It's framed here by the ruins of Theramore, the city she founded, which was destroyed by Garrosh and the Mana Bomb. And the very first we saw of Jaina this expansion was her leaving this decimated city behind, symbolically turning her back on it to face her demons. And this ship has been where she's faced a lot of them, whether that's the ghost of her father, the forces of the Horde, or the wrath of her own people. And now, her personal journey throughout this expansion has led her back to where we started. Jaina now wears the Lord Admiral's pendant that she shamefully carried away with her in the Warbringer. We've come full circle in this psychological journey, and as Theramore frames the ship that we've come to recognise as representing Jaina herself in so many ways, it reminds us that despite everything, so much of the character of what we see as the character of Jaina Proudmoore is seen through this prism of what happened here and what the Horde did. And so we're not surprised that when we see Jaina, she is on full alert, waiting, ready for whatever might come. And the image of ships appearing through the mist is one of the trademarks of this expansion. We've seen it used so many times in BFA, and as the swift vengeance shows itself through the Theramore fog, because the Horde players didn't just steal Derek, don't forget, they stole the boat too, which is a bold-ass move, frankly. But of course, this is quite explicitly a Forsaken ship. And Jaina's aware that she's here to meet Baine, so this already could be a trap. We see her hand grip her staff tightly because at this point, Jaina has to be ready for Sylvanas to step off that boat, and the cinematic plays on that tension with this ghostly, incredibly spare sound design of the two ships. These symbols, almost embodiments of the two factions and their differences, pull up alongside each other, uneasily, carefully, like the delicate temporary truce that exists between these representatives of different factions in this moment. And those creaking ship sounds are really reminiscent of that glorious moment of near silence in the Jaina Warbringer after she's raised her ghost galleon, which we called at the time her Ship of the Dead. But here is an actual ship of the dead, a forsaken vessel carrying its unliving passenger. So when this gangplank thuds down across the deck and we see the pretty distinctive silhouette of a massive cow person, there has to be a moment of slight relief, you'd have thought, for Jaina, that it's not definitely a trap yet. Not that she shows any signs of relaxation as Baine approaches. You suspect that there's probably a tiny part of her that would have preferred it if it had turned out to be an ambush. At least they could all just have a massive fight and be done with it. But no, instead, things are about to get a little bit more complicated. I really like this shot of Baine's heavy hooves clumping across the gangway, and don't forget that as he takes these steps, there's now no going back, because as Baine steps onto Jaina's ship, his act of treason towards the Horde is now complete. He is now an official traitor. So this walk over the bridge is like walking to whatever destiny that might hold. And as the mysterious figure that Horde players know to be Derek follows the Tauran chieftain onto the Kultiran ship, and just like with Dalin and Catherine, our first sight of this ghost from Jaina's past is from behind. So much of Jaina's story this expansion has been winning back those who turned their back on her. And much has been made of the dagger that Derek is wearing on his belt here, and we are going to talk about that a little bit later, don't worry. Baine greets Jaina with a formal cordiality as if this was some official diplomatic function and he hadn't just stolen a boat and killed its crew to get here.
Lady Jaina, long has it been since we spoke peacefully in Theramore.
And it's probably worth reminding ourselves a bit about the relationship between Baine Bloodhoof and Jaina Proudmoore here, because this is not the first secret communication these two have had around Theramore. It was Baine that tried to warn Jaina about Garrosh's attack on Theramore, an attack that was actually a trick to get Alliance leaders all in one place before the Mana Bomb was dropped. So even though he was trying to do the right thing back then, the skeletal remains of the destroyed Theramore that we see all around us here are A not so subtle reminder to us that when Baine tries to help out Jaina, it doesn't always go according to plan. It can, in fact, go very, very wrong. And what that might make us think is that going to ultimately happen here? Because Horde players know that Baine's intentions are genuinely good, but even then, as the music swells to dramatically reveal Derek Proudmoore's face, we suddenly realise we've never actually seen his face in this kind of cinematic before, and actually we don't know what he's going to look like, and this is the moment of genius in this cinematic, I think, and one of the reasons it's so effective and so confusing and so well done. Is Derek Proudmoore's face. Because we're going to talk later about how trustworthy Derek may or may not be, but the animators make it very clear throughout this cinematic how we are supposed to feel about him. Because they do, I think, some of their best ever work on Derek's facial expressions here. The feelings of genuine sorrow and trepidation and shame at the situation that Derek finds himself in here are stunning. And this moment of confusion on Jaina's face here too, because she doesn't know what to think. You can see that genuine emotion, but just for a moment, and then she almost reacts disgusted with herself at her own moment of weakness before that morphs into disgust at the Horde and by extension Baine for bringing this abomination to her. And now she's just flat out angry because she doesn't know what's going on. It's like when she gets on this ship, the deep psychologically scarring family drama just never seems to end, does it? Like seriously, Jaina, I'd really consider getting a new boat, you know? I think this one is just bad luck or something. And she kind of takes all of that anger out on Baine with these lines.
I had thought better of you, Baine. So tell me, is he the Banshee's puppet? Crammed full of blight? Is he the bomb this time?
Which is obviously awesome, and thank you Christy Golden, because these cinematics are so short and the writers have to be so efficient in their dialogue to convey important information and character arcs and plot beats in triple quick time. So when they manage to do it with some incredibly badass memorable lines like this, the writer in me is kind of a little bit in awe. And what's really telling here is that she directs this entire tirade towards Baine. She doesn't address her own brother at all. She obviously doesn't see Derek as a person, doesn't acknowledge him as a sentient being and part of this exchange. To her, he is not her brother, but a shell. And also, it's just always good to see Jaina getting badass, isn't it? If you've spent many nights wiping to the final boss of Tazara Lore like I have, then this image of her eyes lighting up and preparing to do some Jaina magic might even bring out some mild PTSD in you. It certainly did me. And fair play, because she is not dicking around here. She is clearly prepared in this moment to kill her friend Baine and her resurrected brother if needs be. And as the destructive power wells up inside her, ready to be unleashed, the sails and rigging of this ship, which often represents Jaina and her state of mind, flap and convulse about wildly to emphasize her inner turmoil. And beautifully, it's the voice of Derek that makes her stop.
Yes. That was the plan.
Because again, the humanity of her risen brother surprises her. And we're just going to cream over Derek Proudmoore for a bit here in this sequence, because the performance, both physically as realised by the animators and audibly through the voice actor, is just great.
But Baine took me from Sylvanas before I was twisted to her will. I'm still your brother, Jaina. For as long as stars do shine.
And I think it's that element of shame that I mentioned that they capture so well that makes Derek such an interesting character, because he died in battle, he failed. Then he was raised into an undead abomination against his will. Then he was tortured and had to be rescued by the enemy. And now his own sister is so disgusted with him that she wants to ice block him to death. And seriously, that's the worst type of death, you know, because it's a wipe. You know it's a wipe, but you still have to wait for that ticking damage to kill you, and it takes ages. And sorry, I really need to get over that boss fight, I know, but I should probably tell you this little story. The story of Derek Proudmoore's voice actor here, because I think it's not really related, but it really gives you an insight into the mind of a WoW content creator. Because me and Evie were watching this cinematic and going, oh, that voice actor is so good. And Evitel was 100% convinced that the voice actor was the guy from Poldark. And I said, there's no way that the voice actor is the guy from Poldark. For one, he's like a big film star and very expensive. But Evitel was convinced, and she played me like all these sound clips of him talking, and I was like, well, that does sound a bit like him, and it would be really cool. So our kind of like Warcraft speculative minds kept on speculating, and it was really funny how we found reasons to prove that it was this actor, because we like looked at a picture of Poldark and we looked at a picture of Derek Proudmoore, and they've both got scars down the side of their face, and we were like, well, that's it, that's decided, it's definitely him, that's definitely the actor, we've sussed it, we've solved the riddle. And obviously it's not him, it's a really good actor called Stephen West. That's actually been known for quite a long time, but we were so sure that our secret theory was right that we just convinced ourselves, we found reasons to make it work. There's probably a lesson in there somewhere. But anyway, it's Derek Proudmoore's clear remaining humanity in this exchange with Jaina that helps soften her, but specifically when he says,
I'm still your brother, Jaina, for as long as stars do shine.
Which is a direct reference to the song that we hear Taliesin Proudmoore sing to Jaina in the Nightmare cinematic.
For as long as stars do shine.
And this is when Jaina finally sees the person behind the Forsaken and recognises her brother. Because it's almost like a kind of a proof that he has resisted Sylvanas' programming. That reference that only a true Proudmoore would know. And hidden away in the soundtrack here is just the merest echo of the Daughter of the Sea song that Derek is quoting.
Why?
And it works. So now Jaina's revulsion and anger is turned into genuine confusion, and she looks for answers in a considerably more gentle fashion. And this is where the cinematic becomes all about one glorious cow, Baine Bloodhoof, as we get this heartfelt, yearning speech from him.
The Horde has a sickness in it. We wage war while the Earth Mother dies. We have forgotten what truly matters, and my heart can bear it no longer.
Vulnerable and sad and open in a way that he can't express, ironically, to other members of the Horde, because that would be treason. He only has the freedom to speak his truthful feelings about the sickness that he perceives at the center of the Horde to the enemy, which is really, really tragic in a way, because there is no doubting the sincerity of this outpouring, the loss this massive and noble cow feels to the honor of something, an idea of the Horde that he clearly cares deeply and dearly about. And as Jaina and he share the frame as equals, face to face for the first time, we see that Jaina recognizes in Baine a Horde that she may have thought no longer existed, or chose to believe no longer existed. She sees the Horde of Thrall, of honor, of outcasts finding a home, and maybe we see it too. I said way back in the Legion epilogues that Baine clearly was supposed to represent the heart of the old Horde, and we've now reached a point where that heart is no longer compatible with what the faction now is, and my heart can bear it no longer, he says. And here's the thing, because as Jaina notes,
Sylvanas will kill you for this. And she may not stop with you.
this act of defiance from Baine, it's not a violent rebellion. He's not taking arms against a tyrannical war chief like Vol'jin did against Garrosh. He's not putting together an army. He's not asking the Alliance for help. He's simply trying to right a wrong, to give something back that was stolen. He's not a violent revolutionary. He's a conscientious objector in a way, which he doesn't need to be, because look at him. He's massive and awesome at fighting and has a potential army at his back. But that's not what this is about for Baine.
No life is worth living if we cannot be true to our nature.
And he's talking about Sylvanas trying to bypass the free will of the Forsaken and stopping them being true to their nature, but he's also talking about himself. This is his nature. Baine is no politician. He's no schemer. This isn't a grab for power. Maybe he feels guilt that his efforts to help resulted in such carnage for Jaina and Theramore before, and that is something he's trying to atone for too. That seems pretty likely. And after reuniting this broken family, Baine turns his back on his official enemy and returns alone to his own side, which ironically is where the real danger now lies for him.
I return home to take what solace I can in my family. I hope you take solace in yours.
He says he's hoping to take solace in his family, but as far as we know, he doesn't have any actual family, so we assume he's talking about his fellow Tauren. Perhaps a few months ago, he would have been referring to the Horde itself, but we all now know that that's not the case any longer. Or just maybe he's seeing the way that the Proudmoore family is being pieced back together despite everything, and perhaps that gives him just the tiniest hope that the Horde can be fixed in the same way. But who knows, because the future is looking very uncertain for him now. The Daughter of the Sea motif plays again, but the instrumentation is Tauren themed. It's played on pipes, like the music from Mulgore.
I return home to take what solace I can in my family.
And usually when this music has played in cinematics before, it's been when Jaina has stood at crossroads of some sort, making an important decision or change, leaving Theramore, returning to Borealis, becoming the High Admiral. Maybe having this motif played in a kind of a Tauren style is supposed to communicate to us that now Baine is at a crossroads, because he really is alone now to face whatever wrath Sylvanas chooses to unleash upon him. But there's a dignity, a nobility in the way that he walks off to face it. And as Jaina calls out after him,
Baine. Thank you.
we know that at the very least, this sacrifice in this moment was worthwhile. So, a few thoughts. First of all, I'm really happy to see that Blizzard have the courage to continue using these cinematics for quieter, more character-based moments. It was always the case before that these scenes always felt like they had to be loud and bombastic and action-packed, and that's cool too, but it's these more normal, I guess, scenes that have a much longer lasting impact, I think. I mean, look, I was worried that there wouldn't be much to talk about for a moment, but it's taken me about 6 years to get through. There's just so much going on, and it's so satisfying to get to the bottom of. Second, I am officially totally sold on Baine Bloodhoof. Yes, please, count me in. I said back in the Legion epilogues that I thought BFA would finish with Baine being War Chief of the Horde, and whereas I don't know if that's going to happen, come on, how could you not want him to be? How could any Horde player, even if they really love Sylvanas and go along with everything she does, how could you not be proud that this guy is on your side? He's awesome, don't at me. Will he survive to the end of the expansion? Well, you get the feeling that shit is about to get very real for him very soon. And it'll be interesting to see how intensely Blizzard keep up this story in 8.2 when we have the massive distractions of Nazjatar and Ashara, because I hope they don't put it on ice. I really adore how the war campaign has been delivered throughout this expansion. Whatever you think of the actual story, and I happen to be really immersed in it, but I don't think there's much argument that technically it's the best story delivery of any WoW expansion by miles, to be honest. I would love to see all of this faction politics stuff continue to play out in parallel to whatever the story beats for Nazjatar are. And thirdly, there's the case of Derek Proudmoore. And I have two questions about Derek. One, can Jaina and the Alliance trust him? And two, what is the significance of another Alliance Forsaken going forward? Because don't forget, he is now the second. So, can we trust him? Something I always like about these WoW cinematics is how big they are on narrative cues. Like I say, they have a ludicrously short amount of time to convey story and characters, so they rely on many different ways of telling you what's going on, and one of those is with narrative cues. So, like when the Antorus cinematic ends with the Titans being sucked off to the other side of the universe and Velen breathing out, that's supposed to tell us, the viewer, that yes, this is actually over now. The Titans and Sargeras and Illidan, they are packed away in a little box and they are out of here. You don't have to worry about them popping up again for a while now. For like an expansion at least, it's now time to tell some different stories. And I think the tremendous facial animations of Derek Proudmoore is one of those cues. Blizzard want us to know that Derek is good, that he's not pretending. I think Derek Proudmoore truly believes that he is not under the influence of Sylvanas, and that he means Jaina no harm. I think that is what is being explicitly shown to us here. However, just because he genuinely thinks he's uncorrupted, it doesn't mean he is. does it? And let's look at the evidence. The last time we saw Derek, he was getting tortured by Sylvanas, literally undergoing the process by which she planned to take control of his mind. But then suddenly, he's on the Swift Vengeance being transported. Who's to say that the mind control process isn't in fact complete, and that Derek is now a sleeper agent in the heart of the Proudmoore family, and he doesn't even know it? Wouldn't that be the perfect way to do it? What if Sylvanas knew that Baine would be a pussy and hand him over, and planned for that to happen to make the deception all the more plausible? We know that Nathanos suspects Baine's going to do something and allows it to happen. Why? I think this is totally possible. That Sylvanas could snap her fingers at any moment and Derek's eyes would turn red or something, and he would start killing everyone around him. Let's not forget that dagger that the camera is so insistent that we notice at his back. There's a thing in theatre called Chekhov's gun. The playwright wrote that if you hang a pistol on the wall in the first act, then by the end of the second act, that pistol should have been fired. This idea that every story element should have a purpose and nothing is meaningless. Well, you know what? This looks suspiciously like a Chekhov's dagger, really, doesn't it? But I guess we'll have to wait and see. How tragic would it be then if, for a second time, Baine risks everything to try and stop the Horde committing an atrocity against the Proudmoores, and for the second time, he actually ended up being the one that made it much, much worse. So whereas I am 100% sure that Derek Proudmoore genuinely doesn't think that he's corrupted, I think we all know really he is. And at this moment, the Proudmoores and the Alliance are in incredible danger. And then there's the undead question. In a conversation that Jaina has with her brother after the cinematic, she says,
"But I know others who have been through this. I believe they can help you."
Now, in my opinion, she can only be talking about Calia Menethil here, who we know Anduin told Jaina about at the end of Desara Lore. Calia, of course, sister of Arthas, who was killed by Sylvanas in Before the Storm novel, and then raised by Anduin and Foul and mostly the Naru in the Netherlight Temple, and who is now a new type of undead. People theorize a sort of a light-bound undead, though we don't know for sure. We haven't seen her in game since the events of the novel. Well, you know what? I think this dialogue suggests that we may be seeing her soon, and you now have two incredibly important lore characters who are essentially Alliance aligned, but who are forsaken. And of course, there's one Talia Ford dragon hanging around too, who is the daughter of the Lich King. And so that makes three, and the thing about three of something is, three is a club. Three is a gang. There is now a significant undead presence in the Alliance. And what does that mean? Will we get playable undead for the Alliance? Is this another step towards that playable third undead faction, which I've been talking about since before BFA started, and which I still can't deep down believe will ever happen, but which really does kind of seem more and more feasible the further this storyline progresses? Okay, how is this for a crazy theory? What if everything is happening just as I described it earlier, and in fact there is a secret switch in Derek's head which he doesn't know about, just waiting to be flipped, but Sylvanas doesn't know about Calia? What if the time that Derek spends at Netherlight Temple and the progress that Derek and Calia make together in coming to terms with their new undeath gives Derek just the kind of strength he needs to resist that evil switch when it goes off? Maybe just a little bit too late. Maybe the plan does succeed to a degree. Maybe he murders Catherine or Tandred, but manages to overcome the Banshee's influence just as he's about to kill Jaina. What if he is so distraught by what he's done that he guiltily flees? We know that shame is already a big part of his character makeup, and makes his way north. What if Calia takes off after Derek to try and help him? What if Talia has learned about the true fate of her father and is already on her way? What if the three of them arrive in Northrend together to find that the Lich King has a new army gathered? And what if he offers these three characters with very strong undead connections a seat at the war table with him? Because then these three characters, confused, alone, racked with guilt and a sense of injustice, would have a very interesting and difficult decision to make, wouldn't they? But what do you guys think? How did this cinematic rate in the canon of Great WoW cinematics? What cool details did I miss? And what do you think the future holds for Derek Proudmoore and Baine Bloodhoof? Let us know in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make them all happen. And seriously, thank you, because without your support, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin Evitel. If you didn't like it though, downvote the shit out of it. And remember, my name is Pyromancer. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evitel. Until next time, cheerio.